Hi, Dr. Kujawa. It's such a pleasure to, of course, invite you and to have you. And of course, have such gratitude for you to agree to do this interview with us.
Thank you, Clark. I'm really happy to be here and very grateful for the translation of The Other Goddess. Very happy to be here.
And your book, I personally read, is so powerful. And through this video, I want to introduce some of the content to our audience and, of course, our members from Taiwan. Maybe just to start off, if you don't mind, maybe you can tell us a little bit about you, how you kind of started this journey, kind of like of course, from the book, a bit of kind of scholarship and practitioner, both personal journey and the kind of scholarship investigation, both kind of started. But maybe tell us a little bit about you.
Well, that's an interesting question because I believe I've been blessed with an interesting life because I lived in many places. And I think each of them influenced me and influenced my journey, spiritual journey, and my scholarship. So currently I live in Australia, but it's, one of many stopovers in my life. But I was actually born in Poland many years ago. And it was now in hindsight, it was a very interesting place to be born because Poland was both Catholic and communist. So that means that I was exposed, on the one hand, I was exposed to the divine feminine, although in a limited form because of a Catholic background. And then I was also exposed to a communist state, which also taught me the importance of freedom in my personal life, right? So the importance of making choices and also the ability to read through any form of propaganda, so to speak. So it was also basically taught me my personal quest for freedom, right? So that was a very important lesson for me. But as far as the Catholic part was concerned, and I included in the first part of my book, The Other Goddess, which is a little bit of a personal journey through different divine feminine. I used to go to church as a young girl, and I was always saw these two images of the divine feminine in churches. One was that of Virgin Mary, which is very similar to what I would say maybe Kuan Yin. I hope I don't mispronounce it, which is, very kind of beautiful divine feminine, but almost like unachievable, like disembodied feminine. That's my interpretation. I don't want to insult anybody. And then on the other side of the church, I saw this image of Mary Magdalene, which is basically the main heroine of my book. And Mary Magdalene was kind of in the shadows, so to speak. She was somehow important, but there was something about her that was shameful. That was rejected. And in fact, for a long time, erroneously, because it's not true, she was portrayed as a prostitute, almost just to discredit her completely, right? It's somebody that is not important. So that was kind of a beginning, maybe not of my research, but of my interest in the divine feminine, and I was looking for examples of the feminine, which was both spiritual, but also erotic, because I wanted to embrace these two sides, and I never really believed that the eros and spirit are separate. So because I didn't have any other examples, and I had only this polarity between Virgin Mary, which is this kind of motherly energy, and this other woman, this other goddess, which is somehow, pushed into the shadows. So I started to look into Greek goddesses because, this is what was available widely in Europe. And Greek mythology, and I was looking in, for example, Aphrodite, and I noticed, which is a goddess of love and beauty, and I noticed that she started up as a very powerful feminine, but then, like Mary Magdalene, she was pushed aside. She became kind of silly and not what originally was intended. So as we're coming closer to modern times, she was more and more ridiculed and was losing her power, just like Mary Magdalene. Then on my journeys, I started to be interested in Hinduism, and I looked at the goddesses there, and there, for example, we have goddess Radha, who is both spiritual and kind of an erotic, but she also embodies devotional love. And I was surprised that she was allowed to be portrayed this way, but then I realized that she was allowed to be like this only because she's very devotional and she's always submissive. So if there is a kind of full-on feminine example archetype or deity, even if she's allowed to connect eros with the spirit, it is like in a submissive role. right? She's just always waiting for God Krishna to come, and she's just waiting for him patiently and prays to him and so on. And then I discovered that also in Hinduism there was another goddess, Sundari, which was a very powerful goddess. She fully embodied her spirit, her mind, her body, her sexuality. But then she was also pushed to the side again, like Mary Magdalene, right? So I thought that's very interesting that these goddesses that were once so powerful were pushed to the side or ridiculed, right? That the feminine could be seen only in this kind of pure, disembodied way, like Virgin Mary or Kuan Yin, very beautiful, but kind of not very achievable, right? Difficult to relate on some level. So that was the beginning of my journey. You probably know from, the first part of my book, when I went to Sweden, went to France, and, I wish to anyone to go to France when you're young, So because it's a beautiful experience of earthly delights. And then I went to Canada, where I studied my master's, bachelor's and master's at the Pontifical Institute and the Center for Medieval Studies, which is a very good, scholarship in my life. That was the best university and scholarship. And although I was there, I actually did not explore the divine feminine because it was not discussed. It was pushed to the shadows completely, and it was not discussed. And only when, through Malaysia, where I was an expatriate and a lecturer for Monash University in Malaysia, I ended up in Australia to do my PhD.